At 19, Ariba learned that fear has a sound, and it was the hollow echo of her own footsteps as she walked toward a house that was no longer her own, her hands trembling beneath the red dupatta that weighed heavier than iron, her heart pounding not with excitement but with dread, because this marriage was never her dream, never her choice, never her prayer. It was a decision signed by others while she was still learning how to dream, and the man waiting for her behind that closed wooden door was a stranger, whose name alone made her chess titan Zayn Malik, a man the town spoke of in hushed tones, a man rumored to be cold, ruthless, powerful, a man people feared. And now she was his wife, bound by rituals she barely understood, surrounded by smiling faces that did not see the terror in her eyes. Her mother had whispered that this was for the family's honor. Her father had avoided her gaze, and her cousins had envied the wealth she was marrying into. But none of them would sleep beside him tonight. None of them would flinch when his shadow crossed the room. None of them would hear the lock click behind them. Ariba remembered the first time she saw him, tall, silent, dressed in black even on a wedding day, his eyes unreadable, not cruel yet not kind, as if emotions were things he had buried long ago. And when the nikah was announced, her hands shook so badly the ring almost fell, and she feared he noticed, feared he would mock her weakness. But he didn't even look at her, which somehow hurt more. The town celebrated for days because the Malik family rarely celebrated anything. Fireworks lit the sky, drums echoed through the streets, and people said this wedding would change everything. But for Ariba it felt like an ending, like her life had folded inward, shrinking into a room where every breath felt borrowed. The bridal room smelled of roses and silence, the walls tall and unfamiliar, the bed untouched and terrifying. And when the door finally opened and Zayn stepped in, the air changed, not with violence but with presence. And she instinctively stood, her voice refusing to work when he spoke her name for the first time, softly, carefully, as if testing its weight. Ariba! And that scared her more than shouting ever could. He told her she could sit, told her she didn't have to be afraid. But fear doesn't disappear because someone asks politely, especially when the whole world has taught you to be afraid. And she nodded without meeting his eyes, her mind racing with every warning she'd ever heard. That powerful men took what they wanted, that wives were possessions, that love was a luxury. And when he left the room that night without touching her, without even explaining why, confusion replaced fear, because cruelty she understood, but restraint confused her. Days passed like slow-burning hours. Servants watched her every move. The house felt like a fortress, and Zayn remained distant yet oddly protective, setting rules that surprised her. She could study. She could visit her parents. She could speak freely, and still she feared him, because kindness from a feared man feels like the calm before a storm. The town watched closely, waiting for signs of scandal or tragedy, and Ariba learned that survival sometimes means silence, that strength can look like obedience, and that stories like hers are lived quietly, behind closed doors. And if you're someone who understands stories of forced choices, silent endurance, and unexpected turns, stay connected to this journey, because what unfolds next challenges everything this town believes about power, fear, and love. But Ariba didn't know that yet, because on the 7th day of marriage, Zayn announced there would be a gathering, a public one, and he had a wedding gift to present. And as whispers spread through the town like wildfire, Ariba felt the familiar grip of fear return, unaware that this gift would not only shock the town, but shatter every belief she held about the man she had married. The morning of the gathering arrived wrapped in unease, and Ariba woke with the strange feeling that something irreversible was about to happen, the kind of feeling that sits heavy in the chest and refuses to be ignored, because the house was unusually alive, servants moving faster than usual, phones ringing, cars arriving. And when she asked one of the maids what the occasion was, the answer came with wide eyes and a whisper, "Sahib ne pura shehar bulaya hai," and that single sentence made her hands go cold. because nothing Zayan Malik did was ever small or meaningless. She dressed slowly, her reflection unfamiliar in the mirror. No longer a daughter, not yet anything else, wondering if this gift was meant to impress, to dominate, or to warn. Because men like him were known for displays of power, and she braced herself for humiliation, for something loud and cruel that would confirm every fear she had carried into this marriage. The courtyard filled with people by noon, elders, businessmen, relatives, strangers who just wanted to witness history, and Ariba stood slightly behind Zion as he greeted them, noticing how his presence commanded silence without effort, how men twice his age lowered their voices around him, how women watched her with curiosity rather than sympathy, as if trying to decide whether she was lucky or doomed. When he finally stepped forward to speak, the entire courtyard fell quiet, and his voice, calm and steady, carried across the crowd as he announced that the wedding gift he had promised was not jewelry, not property, not wealth, but something far more valuable, something that belonged to his wife alone. And Ariba's breath caught because she hadn't known she was supposed to receive anything at all. Servants wheeled out a large wooden chest, old and heavy, carved with symbols that looked more historical than decorative, and whispers rippled through the crowd. Some expected gold, others weapons. Some even joked about secrets, but when Zion opened the chest, there was no glitter, no dramatic reveal, only a stack of carefully preserved documents, and he lifted them one by one, holding them up for all to see, announcing that these were legal papers, transferring ownership of half his inherited assets, businesses, and land, not temporarily, not symbolically, but permanently into Ariba's name, a declaration so shocking that the courtyard erupted into gasps. Disbelief and outright protests from elders who accused him of madness, of weakness, of ruining the Malik legacy. Ariba felt the world tilt, her ears ringing as if she had been struck, because no one had ever given her power before. No one had ever trusted her with anything beyond obedience, and her first instinct was fear, not joy, because gifts like this came with expectations, with hidden prices. But when she turned to look at Zayn, expecting pride or calculation, she saw something else entirely, resolve mixed with pain, as if this decision had cost him more than anyone realized. He spoke again, louder this time, silencing the crowd, saying that a marriage forced upon a girl was a crime society had normalized, and if this marriage was going to exist, it would not be built on fear, ownership or imbalance, but on choice, dignity, and protection. And then, in a moment that would be whispered about for years, he said that Ariba was free, free to stay, free to leave, free to live her life without owing him gratitude or submission, because this gift was not meant to bind her, but to ensure that no matter what happened, she would never be powerless again. The shock froze everyone, including Ariba, whose knees nearly gave way as she realized this was not a performance, not a trick, but a deliberate dismantling of the very power people believed defined him. And for the first time since her wedding day, she felt something other than fear, confusion mixed with the faintest spark of safety. The gathering ended in chaos, relatives arguing, businessmen questioning, the town divided between calling Zayan a fool and calling him a revolutionary. But Ariba barely heard any of it, because her mind was replaying his words again and again, trying to understand a man who terrified a town yet chose to protect the girl he barely knew. That night, when the house finally fell silent, she confronted him, her voice shaking as she asked why he would give her everything when she had given him nothing but fear. And he answered with a truth that unsettled her even more, that he knew what it was like to have your life decided by others, to grow up without choices, to be shaped by expectations that crush rather than guide. And he refused to become the man who continued that cycle. Ariba didn't sleep that night, not because she was afraid of him, but because fear was slowly being replaced by something far more dangerous. Curiosity and the realization that the story she had been forced into might not end the way she had always been told it would. And if you're still listening to this story, if you've felt your heart tighten with every forced choice and unexpected turn, Then stay with us, because what begins as fear in Chapter 1 will transform into a battle of emotions, secrets and choices that will change not just Ariba's life, but the meaning of marriage itself. And this is only the beginning.